Hi, I'm Exandra.
I'm Jared.
And I'm Tommy.
And you're watching Movie Buffs. Welcome back to Movie Buffs. This is our Oscar special.
Who's Oscar?
Oh boy, the film that has everyone talking. Alejandro González Iñárritu's film is sweeping the award season and is set to win the Oscar for Best Picture. Birdman, The Revenant, is the loosely true tale of Hugh Glass, a frontiersman from the early 1800s who overcomes all odds, bear rape, to avenge his son's death. Now, can I just say right off the bat that his son doesn't die until almost halfway through the film, and if it hadn't been blasted all over the internet and in trailers, then it might have made a nice little dramatic twist when that scene came along. But no, I went into the film fully expecting the death, and this just kind of irks me a tad. But this is only at the top of the list of things that irked me about The Revenant. But before I get into the bad, let me give it the credit it deserves. Is it a beautifully shot film? Yes. With its long tracking shots of the beautiful landscape that Iñárritu shot in, there's no disputing that it is a visually pleasing film. Did Leo do a good job? Of course. DiCaprio's performance, be it mostly him screaming, crawling, snotting all over the camera, is notable. And that's it, though. That's all there is to the film. And this is my point. Why is everyone losing their minds over it? And this is coming from someone who did love Birdman, but to me, it just feels like Iñárritu wanted to shoot a 3-hour epic. And yes, that's 3 hours of Leo screaming and crawling to prove to people that he could and win awards. And overall, it's a well-shot, well-acted film with an inspirational storyline, but those elements don't overshadow the fact that The Revenant is a bloated budget film that's downright pretentious.
Well, Xandra, it's interesting how much differently you talk about that movie now than you did when we first got out of seeing it. But my opinion really hasn't changed. You're right that there isn't much there, but I don't have a problem with that. I like to look at this movie for what it is rather than what it isn't. And what it is it's one of the most beautifully shot movies that I've ever seen. It's an extremely well-acted movie with ridiculous commitment to method acting from Leo DiCaprio. And even if it was just an awards vehicle for DiCaprio and Tom Hardy, it's doing its job. And it's a big budget epic that isn't a sequel, a remake, or an adaptation, or a franchise. And you just don't see that anymore. And I really, really like that. I think people's disappointment with this, and some of your disappointment, comes from the fact that they want some really deep psychological, like Cormac McCarthy type exploration of the nature of violence in this harsh, unforgiving landscape and why these people are doing these terrible things to each other. And it's not there in this movie, but that wasn't the point of this movie. And I think if you wanted that, then just hope they film Blood Meridian at some point, I guess.
I really have to agree with Tommy here. I'm all about, critiquing film, looking at it with a critical eye, but at the same time, to me, The Revenant does tell a story in a visually interesting way. And I really don't know how you could say that The Revenant doesn't accomplish this. Some people might simplify what Iñárritu does as, simply long takes, but especially if you look at the opening shot, camera is constantly moving. It follows like 6 or 7 characters while this huge battle is going on. Planning something like that, like when I was watching, I'm like, how did they pull this off? It's really just an incredible feat of filmmaking, and I think, to me, that's what made it so exciting to watch. And to the people like you, Exandra, who, Tommy kind of touched on it, but to people who say, oh, he's just doing this to get an Oscar, or oh, we're just putting Leo through whatever he can take to get the Oscar, is ultimately, who cares? Like, when we look at this film 15 years from now, in the context of the film itself, like, it's fascinating. Sure, he doesn't have a ton of dialogue, but it kind of harkens back to the early age of cinema. This film just accomplishes a lot, uses like I want to say almost 100% natural lighting, which is completely insane. Yeah, ultimately, the way I look at this film, I think we should celebrate this and really appreciate it for what it is.
Room is the Oscar-nominated drama based off the book by Emma Donoghue, starring Brie Larson and 9-year-old Jacob Tremblay. It's the story of a woman held in captivity for 7 years while she attempts to raise her 5-year-old son, giving him a somewhat normal childhood. Well, as normal as she can make it. Most of the film is actually shot in a single room, so kudos to the director and cinematographer for using their space really wisely. But obviously the real triumph here is the fantastic performances by Brie and Jacob. Brie Larson is actually nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress in a Leading Role. She faces some decent competition with Jennifer Lawrence, who was nominated for her role in this year's Joy, a film not nearly as interesting as Room or any other David O. Russell film for that matter. But my money's on Larson for this one. I think she has a good shot at dethroning Lawrence. With Brie's SAG Award win, I think she can really become the Academy's new darling. Hollywood politics aside, Room is an emotional journey about love, survival, and the human's unbelievable ability to adapt.
So first off, I'm going to talk about Trumbo, which is the biopic of Dalton Trumbo, the former Hollywood screenwriter who was blacklisted by Hollywood because he was a communist. And this is actually the first Hollywood movie that was made about the blacklist and about one of the darkest chapters in the history of the movie business. And it's really good. It doesn't pull its punches about the industry at all, and it really shows all the dark aspects of that. It does pull its punches in regards to Trumbo himself, however. The film never actually tells you that he was a Stalinist and he supported, you know, Mao's Great Leap Forward in China instead of just being a regular good old commie. Now the first third of this movie is rushed. It feels like it's all exposition. It's not super cohesive, but it's one of those movies that just keeps getting better as it goes on. And once you get past Trumbo's stint that he did in prison, about a third of the way through the movie, it really picks up when it starts to go into his battle with Hollywood to get back in there and to get working again, his relationship to the industry, his relationship to his films, and his relationship with his family, which really forms the emotional core of the movie. And that part is brilliant, it's relatable, it's funny, it's heartbreaking, it's one of the most realistic family dynamics I've ever seen in a movie. And it works because this is the most well-acted movie I saw this year from top to bottom. Bryan Cranston plays the title role. He's obviously brilliant because he always is. But all the supporting roles here are insane. Helen Mirren will make you hate her as this vicious gossip columnist. James Elliott plays John Wayne, who in a cool touch is only referred to by other characters as Duke. I don't know how the real Duke would feel about a Canadian guy playing him in a movie, but he does a good job. And if it feels like I've been naming every single actor that's in this movie, it's because they all do a great job. At the end, Dino Gorman, who I'd never heard of before this movie, shows up and does a picture-perfect Kirk Douglas. It's a really, really well-acted movie from top to bottom, and I think it's a really important movie to watch now because of the message that it has about free speech and standing up for what you believe in.
Despite casting 4 of possibly the biggest stars in the film industry today, Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Brad Pitt, and Ryan Gosling, being nominated for five Oscars, somehow The Big Short has fallen under a lot of people's radar. The film had the daunting task of not only making sense of the 2008 housing crisis, but also making it, quite honestly, fun, exciting, and interesting to a mass audience. If you don't know, it follows 3 separate but parallel kind of groups that uncover and predict what is going to happen in the housing market, and they essentially bet against Wall Street and make it big. Director Adam McKay, who's done films like Step Brothers and The Other Guys, which is kind of surprising for a film like this, but he's unafraid to put his own style in what you would think would be a serious film like this. This film, kind of like Deadpool, which we've talked about in another episode, is insanely aware of itself. The way it's edited is really fascinating. There's some really surreal moments. It has a really interesting perspective on these real life events that have happened. An interesting tidbit for those of us in Boulder, Brad Pitt's character played a CU professor, but he helps two graduates uncover what has happened here. And there's some wide shots of campus, of the Flatirons, which I totally did not see coming. They actually showed, Boulder and stuff before they introduced his character, so I was just like, what is going on? But it was great. It was exciting. It was cool to see Boulder in such a big movie. I think it does a great job of making the story interesting and calling for action, all while somehow making this possibly the funniest movie I've seen this year.
All right. Well, so next I'm going to talk about The Hateful Eight. And the only thing that's hateful about this movie is everything. All right, okay, maybe that's a bit harsh. It is really well acted. There's some good performances, and Tarantino's dialogue is as snappy as ever. The problem with this movie is that there is no one on set that had the balls to tell Tarantino no. And as a consequence, a lot of this movie just feels pointless. It's too long. Only one of the Hateful Eight characters is given enough development to make them relatable, and the rest are just unlikable from start to finish, and that may have been intentional, but it just sucks. And again, the only character who undergoes any development is he starts out as a vile, stupid racist, and by the end of the movie, he's just slightly less racist, and that's about all the character development you get. But in this movie, his shtick, it just becomes repulsive. And I hate trashing him like this because he is my all-time favorite director. But when you watch this, it feels like Tarantino is Tarantino's all-time favorite director too. And in his world, he can't do anything wrong. But in the real world, you leave this movie feeling like you need a chemical bath. Or 8.
He's just walking through the forest.
The bear
And
didn't even buy him dinner.
I think it put something in his drink.
Oh, God.
I mean,
Just poor Leo.
I mean, I enjoyed watching
So
it,
sad.
You enjoyed that.
What the hell?
but it was quite the cinematic experience.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
What are you guys doing?
The show's over. Like,
Go home.
yeah, we're done.
You can leave.
Check out CUindependent.com. Do something with your life.
Get out.